Thank you very much, York. So I want to start off with a little bit of housekeeping first. So York touched on a few things already, but we have a great lineup for you today. And I need to put on my glasses because I don't see that well anymore in my age. But just so that you know how this is going to go, FReSH, does anybody know what FReSH stands for? No? No idea. I'm going to tell you. It stands for food reform that is sustainable and healthy. And the 4.0 food economy is important because the oldest world's economy is an agrarian society or an agriculture or farming economy. And so we have a lineup of speakers here today that are talking about food reform and about how the future of food is going to be and how we're going to digitize and keep up with the exponential growing times of our world in the future. And for our lineup, I will give you kind of an overview and an introduction into this whole new food economy or this food reform revolution. But then after me, Claudia, a good friend of mine, and also a climate reality leader who was trained in Pittsburgh by Al Gore, is going to be speaking. She's from the Future Food Institute, and they just launched a global mission. I launched with them a global mission in Rome with the United Nations FAO and many other great speakers that are here today as well. Desirable futures in a fresh food economy. So we want to create desirable futures. How do we want to live in the future? I don't know how many of you are Star Trek fans, or maybe I'm dating myself. There was a great director, Gene Roddenberry, and he created Star Trek and these visions about transporters, about hologram machines, about tricorders, about food machines, and kind of did it in the space travel, exploring new frontiers. And these visions in this TV series, even though it was a lot of movie magic, it gave us innovative ideas to envision what the future would look like. And engineers and scientists and everyday sci-fi geeks kind of got together and said, how can we make those reality? And today we're seeing a lot of things like smartphones, 3D food printers, and virtual reality and artificial intelligence that are emerging that are very similar to those images we received from Gene Roddenberry. The problem is there's not very many innovators and Gene Roddenberrys today that are giving us the vision and the future in the next 20, 30, 50 years. And there is Black Box, there's TEDx, there's TED, there's some different series on TV that kind of show some images, but they're just not there. We need these innovators and these people to help food reform that is sustainable and healthy. The future is now. And I want to tell you about Galileo quickly. He was placed under house arrest, Italian, for the belief of heliocentrism. He did not believe, as the Bible said, that the earth was the center of the universe, and he contradicted that belief, and it went against what the Bible said, and he was placed under house arrest for his thoughts and his ideas. But it's an evolutionary process that us as humans are learning along the way to figure out this planet, this world that we live in. And it just doesn't mean that if one person, a scientist, an engineer, someone who is an astronomer, someone who studies the star, or a visionary or a businessman thinks about a new idea or a way to see the world differently, that it's wrong because it contradicts what we've done forever. And I want you to get into that mindset for the next part that I'm going to explain to you. This is a temperature timeline of the Earth, and it starts 800,000 years ago and goes to today. You see this little section at the top here, to the top right, and this is kind of tells you about migrations and travels over time, how the temperatures fluctuated. But this last period is 12,000 years. It's when we moved into what they call an agrarian or agricultural revolution, and into a climate or Goldilocks phase where the temperature stabilized enough and gave us a greenhouse gas effect that we could farm, that we could live on Earth, that our brains could get bigger, that we could change how we move. And that's when we started farming, 12,000 years ago. But in that 12,000 years, we've done a lot of damage. It's science. Farming and agriculture is a science. It's not organic. It's not natural. It's a science. The minute man started moving rocks and cutting down trees, we began affecting the climate and our temperatures. It's been around. This is an old petroglyph. Is that what they call them? Of the Egyptians. Here's some old farming with a plow and horses. But now, today, we live in a fast-paced world. Our world is growing exponentially. And we have satellites all over the world, hundreds of satellites that are giving us data updated per second of what's going on in the world. So streams and temperatures and storms and all sorts of information at the tip of our fingertips through innovation, right? It's amazing. It's an amazing time to be living in, but we're living in kind of this 12,000 year period stuck doing the same old thing over and over again, not thinking for the future of our population and where we're going. And so the economy of the world today are kind of broken systems. They're not the greatest thing, but I want you to know it started with agriculture, and it's the world's oldest, 12,000 years, the most successful. It's not only how the problems of our climate and the whole food thing started, but it's also how we can fix it. And so I want you to grasp onto that key so that we can move forward with some ideas or might be some innovative solutions. So adapting to climate change means ensuring food security. But 75% of the world's food is generated from just 12 plant species and 5 animal species. So how many people do we have on our planet today? How many billions? Is that a very diverse diet for humanity? It's not. So if you know about numbers and population based upon this number, that should send up a red flag that if something happens with the climate or with the 10 big manufacturers who are producing 75% of our foods with these crops and 5 animal species, that if something occurs, we're going to be in trouble. And let me give you one example. Puerto Rico was hit by Hurricane Maria. In one day, it wiped out all of their agriculture. It wiped out their infrastructure. So they say 90% was totally gone from one day to the next. Is the very next day, is that all built up again? No. The infrastructure is not there, and it's going to take between 4 and 6 years to build that up. Because it just to farm, to do agriculture, just doesn't happen in one day unless you have a resilient infrastructure. And so we have insurance plans for our cars, for our house, for our health. We need an insurance plan for our planet, for our food system, our agriculture, so that when the unknown climate catastrophe and crises come, that we have a plan to be resilient, to be sustainable, so that we can feed 9 to 10 billion people in the future, so that we can do what is necessary to exist and have a wonderful life. So I really like a resource-based economy on a planet of finite resources. So the footprint in 2013, numbers were released in 2017. It says that per person, 1.7 global hectares per person is replicable. What that means is that for you to live a ripe old age, you need 1.7 global hectares of land to have food, water, shelter, security, and enough to live to a ripe old age, as long as you exercise and eat right and do all the other good things and are not eaten by dinosaurs or whatever else. But the average person on this earth is using 2.87 global hectares per person. So that's a deficit, a resource overshoot of 1.17 global hectares per person. That's a negative that we're not making up for. So last year, August 2nd, what we had is Earth Overshoot Day. That was the day we used all our resources up, and now we're running on this deficit. And one last little fact that's important to know is that 23 hectares of land is lost every minute due to contaminated soil, drought, and flooding. Here's the Doomsday Clock. It was founded by Albert Einstein and from the Atomic Society, and it's at 2 minutes to midnight. About 5 years ago, or maybe even a little bit more, they added climate change to the whole topic, and it moved the clock from 7 minutes to 2 minutes. And then with the things with Trump and Korea, North Korea, it moved it to this 2 minutes. And so climate change is a big factor, which also factors into agriculture, food, and beverages. So Einstein not only founded the Atomic Society, but he says we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And I love that saying because we need to make a mind shift, a paradigm shift from this ego view of the world where man is on top and dominating all species and planet to this more golden rule of an eco-centered view of the world. And that means treat people and planet how you would like to be treated. And to think about the future of other generations even if you're not here. And that goes into kind of numbers and an important thing to understand. I've talked about statistics and percentages, but how many people here understand the exponential function? Okay, quite a few, but not as many as I expected. Much fewer than I expected. I've been in groups where I've spoken where everybody's raised their hand, but I knew that the majority of them still didn't know what the exponential function was. Our world around us is growing exponentially. Technology, cell phones, computing power, population growth, it's all growing exponentially. But humans and a lot of things we do are still moving linear and lateral. We're still stuck in this thought process, and the innovations and the things we're doing to combat things are not growing exponentially, or we're not having business models that are keeping up with these exponential times. We're giving people funding for $20,000 to buy a new computer or to $100,000 to get an insurance plan, but we're not dealing with numbers and innovations that keep up with this exponential growing world. And so I want to give you a little example here to make sure you truly understand it. If I put one bacteria at 11 o'clock in a beaker, and it splits every 1 minute, 1 to 2 to 2 to 4, when do you suppose that it will be half full? What time? Anybody want to shout it out or guess? Okay, well, let me show you the exponential growth. This is actually two bacteria that are splitting and how fast they're growing. And how quickly that occurs. Our body is made up of millions and billions of microbes, gut health, and cells that are growing. And our world is, and microorganisms and things are also growing. So now, let's look at this exponential bacteria growth. What time do you think it's half full? 11:59, right? So now, I'm going to go out and find 3 more bottles because I say, wow, I'm a bacteria in this jar. It's getting a little bit thin. And you can also relate this to planets. I just went out and found Mars, Jupiter, and Venus, and we're going to go colonate there because we've got exponential growth going on this Earth, and we're going to go there because we found these other planets. So how much time have we bought ourselves with 3 new vials or 3 new planets? 2 minutes. And so going back to the Doomsday Clock, or if anybody's ever heard we're 5 minutes before midnight, or the United States uses 5 planets worth of resources, or Germany and France use 3 planets worth of resources, the world or the exponential function is screaming at you, we're 2 minutes before midnight. And if you understand that function, and if you understand that in your own life, let's come up with some real innovations and some real exponential solutions to combat the exponential problems that we're seeing arising in our world. So, another great Italian that I mentioned earlier, Galileo, we cannot teach people anything. We can only help them discover it within themselves. So that's why I'm kind of asking you the questions. That's why I'm showing you. I'm hoping you will spark something in your mind that will move you to research this or to find out and ask these questions yourself so that you can figure it out. Now, I'm a United Nations SDG advocate, so I talk about the SDGs all the time, but they were laid out very linear and lateral when they were presented to us. And because we're human, we kind of look at them that way. And when I tell people I'm an SDG advocate, they say, oh, which one do you like? I like number 1, or I like the red one. It's the cool. And then I said, I like them all. And I actually use them all. And here is the manifesto behind the United Nations SDG goals. And I want to just quickly read it for you. But it's a beautiful, almost utopian manifesto. But it's this desirable future that we want to have. It's setting it up in words that we can embody it and live it. Imagine a world where there is no poverty and 0 hunger. We have good health and well-being, quality education, and full gender equality everywhere. There is clean water and sanitation for everybody. Affordable and clean energy has helped us to create decent work and economic growth. Our prosperity is fueled by investment in industry, innovation, and infrastructure. And that has helped to reduce inequalities. We live in sustainable cities and communities, and responsible consumption and production is healing our planet. Climate action has capped the warming of the planet, and we have flourishing life below water and abundant life on land, and diverse life on land. We enjoy peace and justice through strong institutions and have built long-term partnerships for all the goals. And here they are, all 17 of them laid out very linear. So who likes blue, who likes red? They all have a deep meaning, and it's actually the planet protection plan. It's the plan that's going to give us this desirable future, but they don't need to be looked at linear. This is how they need to be looked at, like a cake, a pie, a triangle, something that is involved, because all 17 of the United SDG Sustainable Development Goals are tied intrinsically to food. And the very bottom level, the biosphere, is how we use the resources to produce food. And then there's the society tied to food, and then the economic, and then the partnership for all of them, which is tied to food. Now, I always talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you know about that, the very basic of human needs is what? Breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, and excretion. So, because it's the very basic of human needs, Why are we not giving it the most important cause and job, respecting farmers, not wasting food? Why? It's the very basic of human needs, and this is also how we should see the SDG goals. And I don't want to go into this because I'm already running short on time, but here's all 17 laid out, and it's not going into detail, but here's how each one of them is tied to food, because some people say, well, how are all 17 tied to food? I just don't understand that. These are just one sentence or one little paragraph about how they're tied to food, but I can tell you for each goal, there's more than just one sentence of how they're tied to food. There's multiple paragraphs and pages and books on how it's tied to food. And then one other thing that people don't know about the SDGs is there's a number, a dollar figure behind all of them to be able to reach them by 2030, and that is 90 trillion US dollars. That's 6 trillion US dollars per year that we have to invest to reach the goals by 2030. And just so you don't think I'm making up the number, it's all over in papers and articles from The Guardian and from the United Nations. And that would mean the 6 trillion every year by 2030 would come out to be 90 trillion, and now we're a few years behind. It's actually a little bit more, 94, maybe even higher trillion. But I want to show you here on the left side is business as usual. If we don't do anything sustainable development, we're going to invest this money anyway, 89 trillion US dollars, when we put on a new coat of paint, change a tire, renovate a building, or just do the business as usual. But if we do it the sustainable way, the resilient way for the long term, it's only a few trillion more. It's 14 trillion more US dollars to get us to 94 trillion. And so that's not a big sacrifice, and it's not a big effort, because that money comes from many different areas. Just to put it in perspective, 2017, the US debt was 20 trillion US dollars, which is much lower than 90 trillion, but that's what that looks like. There's the Statue of Liberty, a crane. The food industry is the largest global warming contributor overall. So we've heard in the past the oil, gas, fossil fuel industry, the coal industry is the #1 contributor. It's not true. It's never been true. The #1 is the agriculture, food, and beverage industry, because it's a multifaceted, wicked problem. This data comes from IPCC data compiled, and it's got the largest imbalance. So you see the total environmental costs as percentage of EBITDA, what they make on the green, which is 89, and the total environmental cost is 224%. It's an imbalance. And what that basically means, one, they're not paying for natural resources or natural capital. And second is if the oil and gas industry or the car industry were to throw away 30% of everything they produce, like the food industry does, then it becomes a 10x waste. A reform of the agriculture and food and beverage industry is crucial for achieving the SDGs. And you can see here just basic that there are 6 SDGs that are kind of intensively tied to this industry that, you know, it's very obvious. You can see that it is. But this is my solution, because I not only want to talk about it, I want to give you examples and come up with some innovative solutions. And it's called the Anya Aloha's Eco Center. So Anya stands for Adaptive Nutrition Joint Achievements in the Aloha's Eco Center. Aloha stands for Adaptive Lifestyle of Health and Sustainability, and it's an eco center because it's a system. It's complete, it's closed, it's rounded, and we will revolutionize the agriculture, food, and beverage industry. As you kind of see, there's some renewable energy there on the roof. But here's a video
production facility CO2 neutral
to explain it.
Energy balance equal to net zero. Growing vegetables exclusively with rainwater. The green production facility of Anya GmbH turns current food and beverage production facilities on their head. Our complete concept of an urban green production facility sets new standards worldwide. By combining technology, innovation, renewable energy, and the recycling of resources to a holistic system, it is a truly green system. The sun, wind, and rain are our primary energy sources, along with Tesla power packs as backup. Our energy balance is net zero 365 days a year. Our process uses a complete water cycle management system that resolves the unsustainable water imbalance currently used in the food and beverage industry. We recycle and use our rainwater to 100%, and we access and protect our own natural groundwater because we filter the water with reverse osmosis equipment, and we recycle 100% of our gray water. By using only organic filtered rainwater and automated vertical farming, we have optimal space and power utilization that allows us to grow a portion of our raw materials in-house. Current food and beverage production facilities have stood long enough on their heads. We place them back on their feet.
So we have a prototype, the Año Lojas Pilot Initiative. It's not only in Germany, it's also in developing countries. It can be scaled to fit individual infrastructures. So this Año Lojas Eco Center is not about the products. We can do a lot of products, great products, cold pressed juices, waters, smoothies, salads, vertical farming. We can do raw bars and all sorts of food. So very large scale food. It's at the equivalent of one Coca-Cola bottling facility or one Carlsberg bottling facility, and also one, let's say, Metro packaging facility, Edeka, Carrefour packaging facility for their own private brands. So it's up there to play with the top 10, but it involves all the 11 SDGs, or not all the SDGs, but 11 SDGs, and it addresses 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 11, 9, 12, 13, 15, and 17 that it directly addresses with this one facility. Anya's vertical farm will grow 1,000% more fresh produce yearly than traditional methods. So it's on 8 floors. On each floor, there's 12 sets of racks. That's 96 racks over 8 floors, and that all together is just over 1,200 hectares of land on a 10-hectare land spot. So we're exponentially using land efficiently, without soil contamination, without finite resources. Exponential use of harvestable land, massive increase in harvested area, 1,000 hectares versus 10 hectares, approximately 30 harvests a year, because it's enclosed environmental agriculture. It's a closed system. Regardless of weather and climate change outside, it's a resilient system. No pesticides, no artificial fertilizers, 95% less water consumption, and we'd like to get it even better than that. No negative environmental impact, and we produce 12 different plant species right now, but we're looking at things in the future. So salads, microgreens, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and spinach. Anya will use state-of-the-art beverage production and also set the example by using 100% clean tech. Clean tech, not only automation and mechanization, but clean tech in renewable energy, battery backup, no CO2 emissions in our production. Here's an example, co-packing and beverage filling role model for the industry. You see Carlsberg and you see Coca-Cola on how much daily, these are daily stats for their facilities in our area close in northern Germany, how many metric tons of carbon emissions they have a day, how much water consumption they have in liters, and how much energy consumption they have. Well, Anya generates its own finite resources, its own renewable energy, so we don't have that. Anya will use 100% rain and ambient water harvesting and will not deplete groundwater resources. We're hoping to be a 3 million hectoliter beverage facility, so that's pretty substantial. We have a full and complete water management system. We cover all our water requirements through rainwater harvesting, ambient water harvesting, which is humidity drinking water, cleaning and process so that we don't waste our clean and process with water. We recycle that. We also recycle gray and black water. We use our black water for organic fertilizer in our nutrient film technology. And then we have zero mass panels that we use outside in our do-it-yourself kind of park to show people how solar can generate water. Anya will create 100% of its necessary energy renewably, and we also store it in Tesla power packs and aqua and saltwater batteries. We use the Panasonic photovoltaic N330, which is right now one of the best, and Vesta wind turbines. Anya will grow 100% of its produce locally, no pesticides, fertilizers, outdoor pollutants, and it will have higher nutritional value and better taste. Our roots are bigger, our nutrients, our minerals, our vitamins are better. At each respective location, Anya will create sustainable agriculture and an energy community. And to go back to what I said before, it's a resilient infrastructure. It's not about the products, it's about how we produce, and no matter where it's built, whether it's in Italy, whether it's in Germany, and actually it would be my preference that it's in a third world country that really needs it more than the Western world. And I would really like to see that happen because it's an infrastructure. It's not about the products, it's about resiliently giving those people an infrastructure that when whatever climate calamity comes, whatever government or corruption comes, that the people have energy, they have food, they have water, they have resources, and they have a place that provides their community with an infrastructure. This is our location in the Heide, which is in Schleswig-Holstein in Germany, just north of Hamburg, and we have many partners. And we cover 3 SDGs here, but there are many other projects going on around us that use green hydrogen power to create all sorts of energy and other great technologies and industries that are now making this sustainable shift. Here's some of those, and that's our actual plot of land and what it looks like our facility from above. We're right on a freeway exit. We have Tesla supercharging station. So it's really cool. And Adaptive Nutrition Joint Achievements is the partnership for the goals. We want to work with everybody. We want to be open and transparent. If you have an innovation, a solution that can help us, we want to work with you. Vice versa. We don't want to hide or protect the market, the world. The numbers that I spoke about are just scratching the surface. There are 1,200 vertical farms to date, maybe more growing every day, in the world right now. If you know that with the population growth and the amount of mouse we need to feed and the population we need to feed in the future, the solutions that are happening in the Western world and in Asia are so few, we're only scratching the surface. We're probably tickling the surface because the problem or the future that we need to create is much bigger. So there could be 100,000 vertical farms. There could be 1 million vertical farms with 1,000 different types of technologies. We don't need to compete against each other. We don't need to say mine's the best and the biggest and the greatest. We just need to do it so that we can feed the people in the future. That's where we need to be. Because to say I'm the best, I'm Tesla and this great, you're missing the boat. That's not keeping up with an exponentially growing world. That's trademarking, copywriting, and making yourself small so that not the whole world can use a great idea or to solve the problems that we need to solve. So this market, or there's 70 markets that are ripe for disruption, but our industry, agriculture, food, and beverage, you can see it's on the tipping point of disruption and change. These are some new innovations and companies that are coming out, and it's only getting more. And just like Airbnb or the space race or Uber, this industry is ripe for disruption and is changing. Why? Okay. Here's another one, the plant and biotech, animal biotech, food and beverage brands of the future. We need to stop eating our world. And the way to stop and reverse global warming, to fix this problem, one is to globally reform the entire food system. 2, to empower women, 3, to empower girls, and 4, to rethink refrigerants. And if you don't know why 2 and 3, come and talk to me. Thank you. So don't leave the stage yet. Did you get a chance to show those off properly?
No, I didn't. I think it doesn't really fit from a topic.
Okay. Well, we travel around and speak a lot together, and we work very well together. But this is a book, The Beauty of Impact Health, that we're giving away free. We want to give you a signed copy or give it to you. It's inspiring and it's beautiful because an impact innovation is something that affects more than 1 million people's lives or addresses a global grand challenge. And as Timo mentioned in his talk, there's a bunch of them in this book. But what I'm more excited about is the book that's coming out around September, I hope. It's going to be The Beauty of Impact Food. It's based on food innovations. And so it's very fitting to what we're talking about today. And some of the innovations Timo mentioned, a safety net, and that will be in the book as well. But it's printed on rock paper. It's printed in a sustainable printing facility. It's printed with organic inks. Rock paper feels like silk. It's waterproof. It's recyclable. It's upcyclable. And it's a really cool thing. Does anybody have a question for Timo? Because I do. Out of all the innovations that we see, and last year we did 32 events and traveled around all over and heard a lot of impromptu pitches. What has impressed you the most last year to this year?
The ideas are all so different. So they are all, the beauty of these ideas is, I mean, many people ask like, oh, how do you actually select? What are your KPIs? And these are, to me, old-fashioned financial market-driven questions, right? When you look into the financial markets of today, there's a mind shift. Even the Blackstone CEO sent a letter to all the CEOs of the DAX companies saying financial performance is important, but it's likewise important to look into societal impact, because without actually looking into that as a KPI, as the key KPI of your operations, you will not have the freedom to operate in the future. So, and then you will not have the appreciation of society of what you're doing. And so it's getting more and more important to look into the power of the ideas instead of looking only into the power of the commercialization of it. And or to give you another example, I mean, we as a foundation, we give just 50 million euros a year, but we do that already for 120 years. That sums up to about 2.7 billion euros we're actually spending in impact projects. And there is a study of WHO saying that with 2.7 billion, you can feed the population of Africa 2 weeks. So you see, money is not really the important driving force. Yeah. Money is important to put it at the right spots, but for that purpose, you need to find the people. Or in other words, as a foundation, without a project in which we can invest, we are only a bank account and could not achieve anything.
I agree.
So the most inspiring thing to me are the stories behind these innovators. They are all very personal stories. Either they have a challenging situation in their families, or they live in these communities in the remote areas and see all these like unsolved like challenges and come up with new solutions. And that is the most. Or how do you see it?
No, I see it exactly the same way. And I mean, we go to a bunch of these different events, and we're dealing a lot with Western world countries. We don't go. I mean, we do go to third world, but mainly we're focused in Western world. But of a lot of our innovations, and especially in this book, came from third world places. Is there a big difference or a trend that you would like to see, or some thoughts that you could express, the difference between these Western world innovations that we're seeing, the pitches that we hear, and the ones that are actually in country by the farmers or the people that are living the day-to-day things that you might want to express to us?
Without stereotyping, I sense this broad openness for innovation in people in developing countries. They're really eager to innovate and to apply textual solutions, and they don't have these strings attached to these old things and old habits and old infrastructures we do. I mean, they don't have any landlines, right? They actually hopped straight away into like mobile phones, and nowadays you have in Uganda, like, you know, just more mobile phones per person as you see it in Europe. So I mean, this openness for innovation is incredibly like inspiring, and on the other hand, when you take the quote serious, if you want to be a billionaire, you have to solve a billion people's problems. I mean, what does that mean? There are no billion people in Europe, nor are there billion people in the US, right? If you really want to actually make this like enliven, you have to go to India, to Africa, to Latin America, to Southeast Asia, to find these billions of people who have these mega challenges.
Exactly, and I think that I touched upon it as well yesterday in my talk and today a little bit. There's a number of things. We're getting caught up in misunderstanding population and numbers and monies that are available out there, whether it's millions, billions, or trillions. We don't have a true connection of what those numbers sometimes mean.
That's a sad thing. In the end, I mean, one or the other way, everything is connected, right? And when you look into the first world financial markets, where like the power of wealth is actually going out there and looking for new investment opportunities, a lot of issues we see in the developing countries are straight connected to the way how we do financing businesses. I mean, just look into the old-fashioned way of financing pharma businesses. The finance sector looks predominantly into margins as a KPI.
Yeah.
That means, as a consequence, you cannot sell drugs at a lower price in developed countries, because that is actually going to ruin your margin and upset the finance investors. So, and that kills people in the end. Yeah. So, right, as long as there's not a mind shift in performance measuring in the financial markets, there will be no opportunity to actually make access to medicine for the billions in need in the developing world, which is insane.
There's, I don't want to get too rude, but there's a thing that I call a rule, and you might have heard about it. It's called the bullshit rule. And we have a lot of these rules and these laws and things in our world, but I call them rules a lot of the time because they're KPIs or whatever else. But someone who's living in the third world, or as a farmer, or as a girl or a woman who's not being empowered but harvesting our food every day, they don't care about the rules. They don't live the rules. There's some different things that we need to put in perspective, and I like the fact that my goal is to reach billions of people and empower them to live an adaptive lifestyle of health and sustainability, and billions is a big number, but if you know how big our world is and how we're connected to it, that can be put into great perspective.
Definitely. The ability of the world is much bigger than we think. By having the technology available we have today, we can do things that have not been done before. So, I mean, the future is prosperous. We just only have to go for it, right?
Great. Thanks, Timo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I have a question. How can we work together?
That's quite easy. You show us a wonderful new architecture in Heide, nearby Hamburg. So Heide, nearby Hamburg, it's not really what we understand about a beautiful landscape. Obviously, we are here in Italy, so we try to understand a little bit about beautiful landscape. Heide, I know very well Heide, because every year I go there with my family to St. Peter-Ording, and we make a stop on Heide. And every year is the same, every year is the same, flat land. So my question, how we can deal together, innovation it's like each farm. No? Innovation and good ideas need also good new forms, something exciting, something very, very, that people, so Bosco Verticale, that is something exciting, people have a look.
Yep.
So please keep attention for your design, because design will be so important. Your new farms are not Aldi market,
Exactly.
are not little market. They are something special. So what we bring in the inner part, we try to bring out also in the outer part. So people will stop, and they'll say, what's that? And young childs will ask us, "Oi, we need to stop there, there's something special." So I think in terms of making livable our landscape, and maybe when we start in Heide, then we have a really good example for the rest of the world.
Great. I totally agree. Thanks. I look forward to that, and we'll share it with you as well.
Okay,
Thank you very much. You are exactly on time. You've got it down to the minute, but I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
What's the most copied or security problem with food? Which product, which brand would you say that you see the most?
Parmigiano Reggiano is the most coveted product for sure.
Okay.
And we have also at second place the tomatoes, pomodoro. A lot of tomatoes everywhere.
And what's the market share on that as well for Italy, roughly?
In Italy, consider that in Italy, sorry, in Italy we invest, our production, our overall production is 200 billion of euro, and we export just 41 billion. Okay, so as I told you before. Outside of Italy, just copying our product, the revenue is more than 70 billion. Yesterday, in the Cibus Parma, where I present our Autentico, the Federalimentari talk about 100 billion of product fake. So it's an enormous big market. We can, for sure, we can export more than 100 billion.
Just one last quick comment.
Yeah.
So I know there's the big dollar figure,
Yeah.
right, which is pretty impactful. But there's something more important behind that number. So behind the food security issue or the fakes, what have you found or what have you heard? I'm sure you've done a lot of research that they're finding in these knockoff products or these products that are saying, are some of them bad? Are they good? Or are they just another brand promoting its Italian?
Okay, for sure there are a lot of stranger Italian brands that are fighting with us because for sure we are a startup, so we are not political. So our reports are public, and we are create an observatory of Italian sounding when we report all the information that we collect, and. We believe this is a big opportunity for Italian company, especially for the consumer, because the people that love Italian food, they pay more. They don't pay less. It's incredible.
Perfect.
Because they pay more, and so they deserve more.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Giuseppe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. One question, the reason why I asked that is usually we hear these statistics and these big numbers, right, and dollar figures, but there's usually always a factor behind that. So by the way people are employed and how much their wage is paid, if the company is cheating on emissions or on the type of food product or the type of branding, yeah, there's a dollar number in the market that's affected. But there's usually always an individual or something behind that that's also affected. Let's talk about real quickly in 2015, the Dieselgate from Volkswagen. How many cars cheated on the emissions? Well, and then they were fined billions of dollars. We hear about those dollar figures, but what we don't hear about is behind that cheating are people who die, people who lose their lives, and it's 10,000 people. And same thing with food security, and some food security or authenticity. Usually if a company is willing to cheat or do something like that, not only does it affect the bottom line in the dollar, but it usually means that the employees that are packaging those products are probably not making a good wage because they're cutting corners and cheating somewhere else, or many other reasons. And there might not be a case like that specifically that you know about, but that's where I want you all to think a little bit further and out of the box so that you can understand that it's not just about money and these dollar figures, that there's human beings and people behind that that are much more important. Okay, that's the end of our session, and I want to thank you all very much for coming. I want to make you aware of right outside the door to the right is sustainable wine, many different types, and I hate to say open bar, but it's open bar, so try out some good sustainable wines. And then there's also a little photo shooting corner. It's called Food Fighters, or One Face, One Mission. And so you can get your photo taken and place comments about how you feel about globally reforming food, how you feel about food and sustainability, and what you want to do to fight the revolution to make sure that we can feed everybody down the future. Some takeaways, a sustainable takeaway for yourself. Thank you very much for all the wonderful speakers and your time. Thank you. One last, I want to thank Aha Ka and also Lavinia Lorenzetti for the event, for this planning of all the speakers. Thank you.